everybody to become an industry celebrity. I'm with my lovely friend and someone I really admire, Mandy. And I will say, hey, who's that vibrant woman on the screen? That was me. But I've also been sick. So I'm saying this because I'm going to heavily rely on the talent, which is Mandy today, to really lead this. But I tell you guys, you will not regret this episode. It will transform your life, your company, and I hope that it'll lead you into a better person, better personal brand. So I'm going to start by saying, Mandy, introduce herself. Who are you? What do you do?
Well, can we just pause for that countdown for just 1 second?
The count.
I literally was just watching Blue Ivy like do her runway thing for like the Ivy Park, Icy Park, and then I see that I'm like, who did it better? It's hard to know. You look
Wait, are you comparing me to Blue Ivy? Because I feel pretty darn good. Like, forget her mom. I just want to be her. So it's like, I will take and receive all of that. Thank you.
So good. Gosh, that made my day. Okay. Mandy Bynum. She, her pronouns. I am the founder of the Race Equality Project with my homie, co-founder, who is currently in Bali. I hate him very much, Dion McKinsey, who himself is an investor with Village Global and the founder of coloringtech.org. So that's one of my businesses. The second business, or my first business really, is Mandy Bynum Consulting. We are an organization that helps companies understand like where they should be investing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's even before that like strategy. Sometimes you just need someone like me who's been in sales, who's been in tech, who's been an investor, who's been an advisor, and also knows like a butt ton of things about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how that translates into profitability. So a lot of like actual work that I do is one-to-one coaching. It's one-to-one strategy. It's one-to-one like internal game plans for those who are tasked internally in organizations to create the DEI plan, who are also like fighting for budget to enhance to go towards initiatives and programs around DEI. And it's really, really fun. I work with some amazing people who have a lot of passion around this, but maybe don't have the information they need or the understanding of like what are the physical things they need to do. And so I have a lot of fun.
Yeah, you look like you have a lot of fun. I always see you on my timeline on LinkedIn, talking, speaking, getting awards, getting all kinds of stuff. And I say this, and Mikhail says, "I'm ready for this." I am ready for this too. So we ready, we ready. We ready. If you can't tell, we have a lot of fun. And as a former diversity inclusion director, I appreciate what you do because a lot of people, it's really trendy to be in diversity right now. For those who've done the work beforehand, it's challenging creating the budgets, getting the budgets, understanding how to contract a vendor, understanding where to start. It's a really overwhelming thing. And for tech companies or companies who are startups who want to grow and think like, how do I grow a company that's profitable, that is equitable? It could seem very overwhelming. And so I guess for you, just in the period of where we're at right now, like how do you feel, what do you feel like the biggest message you have for people about how to start diverse, equity, inclusion in their company and building that authentically in their company?
Thank you for asking that simple, concise question that I will not be able to answer simply or concisely. I think the first thing is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and getting a like program or initiative off the ground can come from anyone, quite literally anyone. You can be an engineer, you can be in talent acquisition, as long as you are willing to have a voice. And oftentimes the folks that I end up working with are like the heads of HR, but they're also those people within companies who are what we would call popular, or like they hold a lot of like good tribal knowledge about the company, and a lot of people come to them for information, and like that's where the all of the community knowledge is kept, usually with this one person. And oftentimes that's a Black woman, oftentimes that's a person of color with some sort of underestimated background. Um, and so that's one. Like, there's always someone in your company who has all of that knowledge that you want to be able to tap into. And second, it's really understanding like what's both at risk when you don't have intention around diversity and inclusion, particularly inclusion and equity within your company, and also like what you have to gain. I think oftentimes because, whiteness, there is this fear around, if I give too much power, if I give too much access, if I give too much of anything to an underestimated group, I'm going to be overtaken. It's a zero sum game. I'm going to have to give something up, when it's completely the opposite. The amount of lives that I've been able to enrich, just like holistically, because they have gotten past that fear of like zero sum, gotten past that fear of like relinquishing a little bit of power. And amazing things can happen when you allow people in the room who you were once afraid of, or for whatever reason, or who once didn't have access. So I think it's two things. It's one, like tapping into the folks within your company who you may like have this inkling that you're like intimidated by because they know a lot of stuff. And like, you also don't want to lose them because they probably are high performers. And they're amazing translators. Second, understanding the risk by not engaging with diversity, equity, inclusion is particularly around like your own knowledge of history. And third, understanding like what the huge growth opportunity is when you are able to engage people who have really extensive decision making power.
I love that. I mean, I do. And, I love it because previously, I don't know if you know this, I used to work in risk management.
Mm-hmm.
And I work, and so I say that because I always thought, like, what is the risk of not investing in equity, inclusion, and diversity? Whether it's from, like, the people and talent standpoint. Do you want to recruit top talent? Do you want to keep top talent? Do you want to recruit top customers and clients? Mm-hmm. Do you want to expand new market? Like, it's just so much opportunity, so much reason to be optimistic or excited. But when people have this fear game of, I'm fear of losing versus I'm excited to win, it's really, really hard to sometimes have those conversations. And I think the great part of this equation too, I am biased. I will say I'm biased. I think there needs to be more room for equity inclusion experts who are outside of HR. I'm not saying all HR people are bad, but let's just say that housing, diversity, equity, inclusion within that department has failed a lot of corporations and failed a lot of people. Failed me as a professional in corporate America. And I just say that that's what my experience is. It's not always, but it is. And so if you briefly talk about your sales background and how that brings perspective when you're talking at these spaces and at a seat at the table, how it changes the game and the conversations.
Yeah. A brief history. I started my career. I played sports all my life, and my parents were like, you should go into sales. And my uncle, who is white, was in sales, and he was talking about like how every important career starts in sales. I'm like, all right, well, I know I'm going to be important, so I should probably start to learn to sell stuff. So the idea of selling sounded really great, of like understanding how I can control my own earnings, control my own schedule. So my first job was selling copiers. I look really young. So,
whoa, dang. Okay.
And I was 20, whatever. I still am.
Forever.
Yes. Working at Toshiba with like a team full of men who were twice my age. And within my first 6 months, I, with the help of my director, won $1 million RFP for one of the like community colleges in the South Bay of the Bay Area, and I got absolutely effed in my commission structure because I had accidentally told them that I was leaving right after we closed the deal, and I got like very little commission. And that was my first taste of like, okay, so even if I do my best, even if I'm excellent, there's still risk that someone I once trusted is going to try to, or is going to not give me what I'm due. And from there, I went into radio, which was also like a hugely growing industry as well as copiers. Um, and then from there, I went to Yelp, which is a completely different experience. I had sales experience. It was a very different pace because I was with a very traditional industry. And there was so much else to learn besides like why you need to hit your quota, why you need to be able to close deals. And so I really learned the importance, like all of the fundamentals of selling and all of the things around creating connections. And the results of those connections are that both parties can mutually benefit from the transaction. And I think throughout my career, it was really hard for me, like feeling like a lot of my relationships were super transactional because I like to trust people. I like to connect with people. I'm often my authentic self. And when that trust comes to bite me in the butt later, it was really painful. So I observed all of this throughout my career and became more and more guarded as my career went along, until one day one of my managers was like, you need to speak up in these meetings, and I want to hear what you have to say. And tangentially, it the all of most of the folks I'm going to mention in my story are white men who either were like from the eastern shore of Maryland, where my family's from, who like knew the college I went to, who like saw something in me that other people didn't, who saw me and were like, you have something to give. So this is all to say that when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, I see it as selling empathy. Like you are helping leaders understand the profitability and being genuinely empathetic and understanding where people are coming from and seeing people for all that they are. Um, that and in order to get anything approved within a company, internally or externally, there are so many sales cycles that are happening. And so a lot of times in sales, especially when you're selling software, you're not selling to the decision maker. You're selling to the person who wants this, who for whom this will make their job easier, for whom this will make them perform better, but they're terrible salespeople. Like, I don't know if you've ever met a developer who's like an amazing salesperson. And so half of your job is often like, okay, Bob, like, I know that you want this software. Like, what are the things that are important to your boss? So in sales, you're not only, selling your product, but you're also coaching. You're coaching the people that you are working to sell to. And it's the exact same thing in DEI. You are working with folks who have been marginalized, HR, because it has this compliance background of like, it's a cost center. Like we have to hire, like how often do we hear that startups started by 22-year-old dudes like have their HR person hired before their CFO, or have their HR person hired before their chief product officer? It just don't happen. It doesn't happen until someone touches a butt, or like someone's at risk of like some sort of sexual harassment, that like, oh, we probably need some human resources. And
We
so
probably want to avoid a lawsuit.
yeah.
I mean, that's what it is.
The premise of even having HR or a people team is rooted in compliance and fear. And so those people are put in the margins of that team, but they're often like the most brilliant people who are working at these companies because they understand the product. They know everybody and everything that's going on. They know how much money the company has, and like they're extremely valuable. And like they just have a lot of empathy for people. Also terrible salespeople. And so getting into diversity, equity, inclusion, like I was had so many barriers with my own team. They're like, just be patient. Like, this is how it goes. I'm like, no, damn it. Like, if we want to do this, if y'all care about this, like we can't just sit around and wait. Like, that's not okay. And so I built a lot of decks. Built a lot of decks of like why this is important. Here's the business case. Here's why it costs this much. And here are all the people that you should be investing in so that we can move these numbers that you care about. Like if you want to move these retention numbers, here are the steps we have to take. So it's the same thing as selling. Like if you want to get a raise, you need this product to get a raise. Let's work backwards to what you need to do to get there. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, so my first thought after all of that is I hope that you brand that selling empathy, because I'm like, I need to see that everywhere. That is brilliant.
I've said it a lot.
And
Yeah, I'm so grateful.
I mean, I've never, I'm like, girl. And then second of all, like, I think that is so spot on. So when I was a director of the Diversity Institute within the magazine, I had to sell sponsorships. And who was I selling to? HR, who had no budget, and they had to sell internally. So it's like, literally, you can't sell them to be confident going back to their whoever to say, hey, I really want to invest in this program or offer that's going to actually help us get the resources to increase equity in our organization. It's like, it's really hard. I think that's the thing. It's such a sales game, and people never talk about that. How do you sell someone to care about your needs, to sell sacrificing their own needs to benefit the greater good, to sell people into something that's new and unknown, but possibly it's just a lot of sales and psychology. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so brilliant that you put those two together, or those things together, because really that's what's missing from the equation. And I think if people don't really talk in those terms, it's not going to really win. I don't know. I just don't think while we think that people care about doing the right thing is subjective. And honestly, people don't care about the right thing. They won't care about the right thing for themselves. And so we have to think, like, how do we sell people on, like, this is really the present and the future. And if you guys really want to ride this wave to benefit the most, you have to start now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And my entire life, even though I knew I was not white and I grew up in mostly white spaces, I knew that I was also of mixed race. Like, I had a white mom, and so I had access to certain things that a lot of my friends didn't. And I knew how to connect with people, with all different sorts of people, because I knew all sorts of different people. And being of mixed race, like, there's this acute understanding of what everyone goes through when it comes to being underestimated or not getting a promotion. And on top of that, being an Aquarius, we like thrive so much on other people's success. And like, it seems like we want the sunshine, but like, our sunshine comes from everyone else's sunshine. And so I always found myself in these positions of, like, no matter who the person was, I'm like, I'm going to get that person to do what we want them to do, because then you'll be pumped, and then I'll be pumped, and then we'll party. And so it's the same with HR and selling empathy.
That is such, I mean, and girl, we go down the whole rabbit hole of, like, the Asian Aquarius. Now this is really going to be, I actually went down the rabbit hole yesterday, and I have to share some stuff with you, because I'm like, this is so exciting for the times of the work that you do, the work that I do. And for a lot of people, it's all about community. How do we actually help for the greater good, to leverage our talents and skills to really help people, like, thrive? And I think companies right now, it's the perfect time. And I know something you do is try to help VC and investors really find where are those unicorns, where's those new opportunities to actually find businesses that can solve society problems or problems at large and make money off of that. So where does equity inclusion come into that at all?
Gosh. Well, in a lot of different ways. The first one I'll mention is one that I've always found very fascinating. There's this interesting duality between folks who, like, come out of business school with a startup. Like, that's what you're supposed to do in business school, is start a startup. And so you have this playbook of how to do it, who the investor should be, but only probably like 1% of those people actually are very, very passionate about what they're doing and what they're creating. And being a founder and a CEO is really, really hard. Like, it's sleepless nights. It's very stressful. You're trying to figure out how you're going to pay people. And you're also trying to get funding, and all of these things are happening at the same time. And if you are not getting out of bed every day, like, with a fire under your ass because you are so very passionate about what you're doing, like, it's just not going to work. And so combine that with the times that we're in right now, like, there is so much money to be had from investors, and there are so many companies being created. Anytime I look at, like, portfolios, or I'm attending like a founder's showcase, like, I'm overwhelmed with what is out there, and like, where are all these companies going to end up? Like, are we going to have a huge crash? Is this going to continue to work out? And so that is also very analogous of like the situation around like investing in Black and brown talent. It's like we have to find that unicorn. Like we can't just hire like 30 Black people. We can really only hire one. It's like that is not the case. And so helping people understand that it's not like to like open up their minds around like what diversity actually is as a definition, how diversity shows up in many other parts of our lives and why it's important to our success. And then also helping apply that, framework to investing, that it's spending a lot of money in a lot of places because a lot of those companies are either going to be bought up by someone else or they're going to be really successful themselves. And so trying to shift that mindset from this unicorndom to why not, instead of having your data analysis go out and find these companies that you really can't even connect with, invest in Black VC funds, invest in Black funds, and invest in funds run by people of color because they know other people of color and they know what's going on, and they are so that like we can be more tuned to the products that are being created because we truly inherently understand what they're actually doing. It's this really interesting shift that is really based in fear of the unknown.
Ooh, okay, so it's a lot of things we can go with, but I seem like the fear's at the root of everything. I mean, it really is, honestly, fear and faith. It's kind of just, hey, everyone wants to know, like, the world and how it operates is fear and faith. But like really with this, and I think for people like me, I'm venture capital dumb. I don't know anything about this. This is your world, tech startups, advising, all that. Well, actually, I did help advise a startup, and I say that because I did for my brand, my basis of knowing risk management, equity, inclusion, and branding. So I did in that way. But I say this as someone who is going out and doing this on a regular, and also profitability, because people always, oh, companies are more diverse, make more money. How can we know that, but people still don't want equity inclusion? Like, it's just, to me, it's interesting, even with all the data out there, why are people still making horrible decisions when it comes to these things? Because facts are facts, but actions aren't happening.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I always hate using this analogy but it works. When we're told that we can diet and exercise and we'll, have a fitter body, like that inherently makes sense. But then when the alarm goes off at 6:00 and you're like, oh, I just don't want to get up and lift weights for like the 5th day in a row, then like, it's just not going to happen. And so when it comes to any sort of growth that you want to accomplish, whether it be diversifying your workforce, whether it be, building a more profitable business by changing the way you do basic things, it takes practice and persistence and consistency. And so if you are bringing in, someone like me to do a 3-hour session on diversity, equity, inclusion, then you literally do nothing else after that, you may as well have not done it in the first place. And like, that's a lot of what I try to work with my businesses around, of like, we're not going to go on this learning and development journey because you're not ready to learn. And so if you're not ready to go into this process, like there's some other things that you and I need to talk about first. Because when you ask for money to do these expensive sessions that are rightfully expensive because it's a lot of emotional labor, then and
technical labor too. Like, it's actually work. People think, oh, it's just kumbaya. No, it's actually strategy and research and all that stuff.
It takes me like a full day and a half to build a facilitation from scratch. Like, it's no joke. And when those things don't work, then we don't get investment in them or anything like that again. So like, let's not screw this up because we're up against a lot of capitalism. We're up against a lot of really inherently rooted values that like we can't fix with just one slap.
Here we checked one box. Actually, let's talk about more. What do you do? Mandy, what do you do? And I say this, like, do you have any examples of how companies have really leveraged, one, increase equity inclusion, or at least improve their process and saw some, whether it's result of profitability or just saw some results that were tangible? Because I think people think of diverse equity inclusion as fuzzy feelings. And I'm like, it's not about the feelings, it's actually about results. So do you have any examples of how you worked with a company to like understand how to turn that into tangible results?
Yeah. So I do use frameworks to align the grassroots roles and the executive roles in order to be able to have like the single source of truth around like what the process is. So for example, I work with this one company, or I worked with this one company who had like a DEI committee, but like they were complaining because they weren't being compensated and they weren't, I mean, this happens with a lot of my clients, but this one in particular, they just like didn't know what to do. And the leadership is like, well, the DEI committee just like doesn't know what to do. And so like, should we even have one? I'm like, no, just like any business function, like those people have to develop. And like, let's not forget that you, homie, are a VP. You've been in the game for 20 years. Like, you know a lot of stuff. And we're talking about people who are pretty early in their career, are passionate about DEI, have never been in a leadership position for a myriad of reasons. And like, they don't know how to build a business plan. And if they do, if they have in the past, they've probably been shut down. So the work that I did was working with that DEI committee to like do what is an employee resource group 101. I have written a playbook around like, here are the steps that you should take in creating a DEI committee that's actually going to like do stuff that's going to make you proud, but ultimately get you a promotion, because that is why anyone does extra work at a company, let's be honest. And on the other side, I was talking to the CEO, the head of people once a week to be like, do you understand the potential that is here? Like, when person ABC is able to create a business plan, you didn't have to pay for that training, by the way.
Right.
When they are able to like show leadership skills, do you understand how that's so much less expensive than hiring someone externally that you have to like hire a recruiting firm to acquire? Then you have to onboard them, and then they find out you're an asshole and they decide to quit. This person was an asshole, but like,
yeah, but or executive leadership program, and it's like all these other things that they would gladly pay for versus invest in what they already have.
Right. And so once that makes sense, like, oh yeah, I already do have these beautiful clothes in my closet. I don't need to go to Barney's to buy more.
Okay, Barney's.
Is there even Barney's anymore?
I didn't actually like go straight to Barney's. I'm like, okay, let's go.
And those analogies don't often work for the CEOs of the world. But anyway, so with them, I'm talking like very strict, like economic. And by the way, I almost majored in economics, and I'm so glad I didn't. But like very economic terms around like, do you see this process and how like you're doing the same process you would have before, but you're just sourcing your talent from a different place, and you're actually doing things that are much easier than you were doing before. But like, you just have to change your perspective a little bit. And then what ultimately happens is like, those people get promoted. That person hired more people who looked like them. That person had a voice in the rooms that were important, where they could say like, the folks who are on this team, I don't want to out anyone, like, we shouldn't be measuring their performance on like response time necessarily. We should be measuring it around this. And so like, that little tiny shift in like just perspective and understanding that you have talent in your own building, like how that ripples long after I'm gone, is what really matters. It's just hard for people to see in the moment because, again, whiteness, a tenet of it is urgency. Like, we have stakeholders, we have all of these people, quarterly board meetings with whom we have to report like hiring, retention, and like talent flow. And it's like, this isn't going to happen in a quarter. We're up against 500 years of oppression. So like, let's try to
solve that right now.
Else. Yeah. Let's try to measure something else besides hiring or retention. And oh, by the way, like, you can see by doing what you've been doing for the last 2 years, you have not moved the needle on any of that. So like, maybe let's try something different that's going to be easier, cheaper, and more successful.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think the key thing about the profitability, it's like, part of it's reducing expenses by leveraging the talent and people. Like it's like really, honestly, what pissed me off and what helped me start my business is like talking to chief diversity officers and HR officers, and they're like, we can't find any diverse talent. I'm like, you're telling me you have none within your company that you can't just develop? Like nobody, like it's just wild. And like, or you can't ask them for their friends. Like, it's like, to me, it's just like, how can we be more resourceful? It's like, people are quick to say we have no budget for things, but they're easy to find other expenses to spend money on. And it's like,
Yes.
why is that?
Because it's so much easier to engage with like a non-human entity like money than it is to actually engage with humans you don't know anything about. Like, I'm telling you, Deidre, it's mind-boggling. Like these CEOs are like, but can I ask them that? I'm like, yes. Can I say that I know he's black? Well, you've been doing the opposite for 20 years, and where does that get you?
I mean, at the end of the day, like, we are what we are, and it's like, I want to be me. Like, I'm black, I'm woman, like, I'm doing my, it's like, and it's not like I only want to be known for that, but it's like, call a spade a spade. Like, we like being who we are.
Like,
it's not like I'm not gonna hide. Like, I can't even hide if I wanted to. It's like, let's just say, I just can't. And it's like, we gotta acknowledge and be like, you know what? Let's be less fearful and be like, let's try something new if we really want to get ahead and do what we want to do. But what are some top mistakes you see when it comes to, you know, equity, inclusion, and profitability when it comes to companies and corporations?
Yes, the biggest one is over processing things. Something as simple as like, in your meetings, CEO, just kind of, instead of thinking about how you're going to respond and like where, when you should respond, just listen. And then when you talk, repeat what you heard. It's like, that's all I want you to do. Repeat where you heard and who said it. And like, I'll this response will get okay. So in each meeting, I'm gonna like make sure everyone like calls out who. No. We're not trying to gamify this. Like, we're not going to the process. Just do that one thing and see what happens. And like, even that is just like is really hard for people for some reason, and it's not their fault. There is just, when creating and building companies, there's this mindset that we have to do it the way that we were taught to do it because our stakeholders want us to do it a certain way. And to move outside of any of that feels really risky when you're even if it's something as simple as like, listen instead of think about what you're going to respond to. So there's that. And there often comes a time when the person who is responsible for building these programs either isn't willing or isn't able to get sign off. So if because I'll work with them for a while and it's like, okay, well, here's the thing that's really going to work. It's going to be bringing in this speaker to talk about racism or talk about whiteness or talk about the trans community and trafficking. And they're like, I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that.
It's
like, it's just too much. It's just too much. Or like, they've been asking for a lot from their leaders and the leaders haven't seen like a huge payoff within a quarter. And so continuing to ask for more is really hard. So it really just goes back to that. How do we become better internal salespeople and like anticipate what I guess I'm going to go back a little bit. Two things I try to do in my partnerships is figure out if this person I'm working with is limited or if it's their CEO. And if it's the CEO, then I try to get that person as far as I can get them. If it's not, then the person I'm working with, I'll either try to get to know more people who surround them or like go a little bit deeper with them to understand why there's that limitation that they might feel.
I do have a question too. At the same time, I know you have this fabulous history selling copiers and everything, but on real top, like this, like you had a really kick-ass experience being a salesperson, and we need more. I know, in like I said, the risk management insurance space, I rarely ever saw women, let alone Black woman who was a producer or a salesperson. It's just feast and famine. Like you get those big commissions on these large corporation. Some of these policies like $1 million. You know what I'm saying? Like you get that, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
But I rarely saw it. But do you have any advice for any salespeople who are diverse, underrepresented? Do you have any advice for them how to one get in the game, stay in the game, and dominate the game?
Yes. So, something I used to coach people on is once you're lucky, twice you're good if you're white. But once you're lucky, twice you're lucky, and third you're lucky if you're a person of color and you can't prove how you did it. And that other person, your counterpart, won't have to prove it, but you will. And the reason you can't prove it is because you're not doing anything ridiculous. You're literally just being your brilliant self. And so like having to then document and like build a business case for why you being you is working is not something that people really want to like get up in the morning and do so they can get a promotion. It's like, don't my numbers speak to them for themselves? Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. And so I have seen literal assholes, like C humans, A salespeople, because they just hammer people and we're super rude and we're always bringing in deals, get promoted over me and then get demoted a quarter later because they were so good at bringing in revenue. Whereas I had 5 clients at Yelp, like restaurant owners who English was their third, fourth language, who would call me up every 6 months, be like, I opened another restaurant. Let me buy some advertisement. All right. Because I like took the time to get to know them. I went to their restaurant in San Francisco, like shook hands with them. And like, that wasn't something I was going around the office being like, see, me and Lee, like we buddy. Like, that's how we did it. Like, that's not something I want to like brag about because I just like humans. But like, and I also didn't want for that strategy to be processed and like made another transaction. And so my advice for people who are either individual salespeople want to get into sales is just be aware of how people see you, because perception is reality. And it doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. It's just like you have to understand what are the things that you need to document. What are the things that you need to do so that other people can look past their bias of you and understand that like what you're bringing is value. And so again, a lot of the people I coach and I do career coaching around, I'm like, you need to start building decks because these folks love seeing decks. And so if you can't like illustrate, like create a piece of work that illustrates why you're so brilliant, people are not going to just believe you.
I love that. I love that. If I could put you on blast, I did work with you with personal branding and everything like that. And a reason why I loved you because you're such a passionate person. You're also I always work with qualified people. I don't work with nobody who don't have these skills. And so I have to ask you, like, from that experience, like, what do you take away as the value of really investing in showcasing your personal brand? Obviously, it works for professional level, but like in general, like what does the value you see from personal branding and that you think other people should know about their personal brands?
Yeah. Something you taught me, Deidre, is that like I should be talking about what I do all the time, not just like what I think about and like what I love writing about, but how that applies to the actual business I run. And that's not something that comes naturally to me because having to like amp myself up or advertise myself is just not comfortable. And so once I got out of that comfort zone for like a week, all I did, the same thing I teach everyone is just like have a goal and hit the goal. And I just said, I'm going to post 3 times a week, just as you told me. And every time I post, no matter what I'm posting about, like I'm creative, I'm going to figure out how to tie that back to the Race Equality Index or tie that back to the Race Equality Project or the projects that I do. And like within a month, I was getting all of these inbounds that had nothing to do necessarily with index. Like they didn't necessarily even want to take the index. They just wanted to work with me. And I was like, okay, all right. I know what I got to do. And it just is that, it's that simple.
See, there you go. It's simple, and it's simple also when you have the talent. Like the thing, what really blows my brain: people with no talent talk about themselves all the damn time. You laugh. Is it true?
It
Right?
is so true.
And it's like the ones with talent, you act like you think they have no mouths. It's like, why are you so brilliant? And I don't know nothing about you. And it's just
Yeah.
that's why we can't let those who are the scammers, the fraudsters, the people
Mhm.
out there. And I know it sounds like crazy, but I'm serious. Like it's so many bad people that people get burned, and we cannot let people get burned, especially in this age of Aquarius. Like we have to let people thrive. And so we're not talking
Mhm.
about what we do that actually has integrity and value. We let the bad guys win. So
Mhm.
everyone out there, like if you have talent, skills, and what does that mean? Anyone with some kind of expertise, even my son, he's an expert in tying his shoes. He can teach another kid how to tie his shoes if he wants to. He's
Yep.
an expert
Yep.
in his space. You know what I'm
Dude,
saying?
I was a shoe tire in kindergarten, and I like wore that cape like the biggest badge of honor.
Tie those shoes, girlfriend. A question I ask everybody on my show, and I'm gonna ask you because why not? I'm gonna ask
Mhm.
people. You know, I always think about life and death. I always think about legacy building and what are we living for. So when you think about you, like, what do you want to be known for, and what's a legacy you want to build and leave on Earth?
Mm, it's deep. The legacy that I'm working to build is the confidence, example, and ability to be able to create something and that you're passionate about and like follow your nose around passion and be wealthy. You don't have to trade one for the other. Um, because that's like all I've been able to do my entire career. Like I've never really known what the next thing is going to be, but I know that if I kick ass at what I'm doing currently and if I stay present, that thing is going to come to me. Um, and so I want people to my kids to continue to believe that they don't have to have a particular game plan, but they need to work their butts off at whatever they're doing while they're doing it. Because the way you practice is the way you play. And if you're not continuing to practice good work ethic, then when it comes to game time, it's just not going to work. I also think a lot about the fact that my kids are white. Like they all intents and purposes are white, but they see themselves as mixed. They see themselves as not white, um, and I have trouble talking to them about their whiteness because I race is a social construct. And so like how do we have a conversation around like understanding your privilege and like you're still trying to figure out why I'm asking you all the time if your friends are white because you're like they're brown, they're like kind of white, but like they're pretty tan. Like okay, so to you still, thank goodness, color is still just a color, but it's quickly changing. And so like how do I, I am that there are so many of us for whom like our kids are going to be the 1/16th and our kids are going to be able to pass or would have passed in the 40s, and like how are they going to be able to carry on the legacy of like the persistence, the resilience, the ability to speak up for others given the skin color they have and given the social capital they were born with.
Well, as they say, incognito. It's just like a little spot. On the inside. Like what? I gotcha. That's not cool. Like I
Yes,
mean,
they need to be the gotcha people, not the
it's different parts of the revolution. But no, that's legit. That was a really nice answer. I mean, all the answers are nice, but I really enjoyed that. Now everyone's like, their questions like, do we love Mandy Bynum? Like she's off the chain. How do they work with you? How do they find you? Like, how do they get at you?
Yeah, you can get at me in a lot of different ways. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can email, like all of my things are the same. It's just Mandy Bynum everywhere. MandyBynum.com, at Mandy Bynum here and on Instagram. And if you are someone who either is looking to change your position in your company and you want to have a solid game plan and you want to do that, and you're ready to invest a few $1,000s to do that, I got you. If you are someone who is the chair of a DEI committee and you have a little bit of budget and you're like, I could really use some coaching from me and my team, I got you. If you are someone who is a head of people, who's either new to the organization or you just had some budget earmarked to do DEI and you have no idea what to do, and you're talking to all these consultants who have like this year-long plan and they seem really intimidating, I got you.
And you have a fabulous podcast. What's it called?
I do. Thank you. Gosh, you're so good. My podcast is Equality Matters. I've had the pleasure of talking to friends of mine from Zaina Orbai, who is the Chief People Officer of The Real Real, to my friend Jason Roberts, who is the founder of Kaleida, and he's based in the UK. I talked to my really good friend Joshua, who was the CEO of Outco, and how he does a bunch of leadership training. I talked to my other friend William, who is the founder of Bay Street Capital, who is outperforming all of these financial consultants in companies, and just like brilliant people in all different industries. And I'm thinking of all the other people like Lily Zhang, who is like very famous, LinkedIn famous, about like the industry of diversity, equity, inclusion. And the conversations are so great. And so if you just want to learn about this industry, what the conversations are that we in the DEI space are having, check it out.
You know what's another great tool for learning is your index. What is that?
Yes. I'm trying not to talk about it too much right now.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's cool. Not because it's not awesome, but because like we're in talks with a much larger organization around it.
Okay.
And so I'm going to pretend, well, the index itself is for corporations, organizations who maybe have taken the corporate equality index, maybe have taken best places to work, but like aren't really getting anything actionable out of it. And our index measures 6 different components of your business, from like how much budget are you allocating, what do the benefits look like, the actual processes that you have in place, and comparing that to other companies, what they're contributing, what budgets they have, and how that impacts their ability to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I just foam at the mouth with the cool data that we get to see around what companies are doing and being able to share that information, because otherwise like chief diversity officers and anyone in DEI companies or DEI positions are pretty siloed and just like don't share a lot of information with each other.
I don't. And like I said, clearly Mandy is a woman on the move. You got to connect with her, follow her, because literally she talked about a million different things right there that shows that she's an expert in her space, she's well connected, and she has resources. She is the plug for all things diversity, equity, inclusion, and profitability. So please connect with her. And if you're out there like, I want to build, grow it, and monetize my personal brand, holler at me. I'm really damn good at that. And I say that like honestly. So if you're like, I am struggling to figure out who I am, how to grow my career, how to get paid for the talents and gifts and just being my authentic self, let's get you paid for that. We don't have to do anything like sell out. We don't have to do any like, what's code switching and all that stuff. This is not that time anymore for that. Be your authentic self, get paid for doing that, because this is the age of Aquarius. This is what the new order wants. And we have to really monetize our strengths and our talents. So any last words, Mandy, before we roll out of this place?
Wash your legs.
There we go. Wash your
like, please just wash your legs. Don't skip your legs.
The water doesn't just run down. You got it. Clearly we have fun, guys. If you enjoyed this, comment, let us know. If you want us to do it again, let us know, because we can just rip all day forever. But I really enjoy this and I appreciate this. So everybody have a great day, and we'll holler at you later. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.